investors that's actually, we met roughly about a year ago, almost about a year ago, selling the family homes. And Terrance, listen, me and my family want to get started with real estate investing. This is Mr. Cameron Watts. Hey Cameron, thanks for coming out and actually taking the time out of working a long day today to sit down with me in order to kind of just be able to break down and go through the process of how you got here to your first closing on your first real estate transaction. So just a quick backstory for the audience. Cameron and his family contacted us. They were interviewing some other real estate agents. They seen that we have done some transaction in the area. We, along with another illustrious real estate professional, my sister, Agent Adair, she actually represented the buyers of that particular home that we sold last year. And essentially we're sitting here now, and my first time having a guest, and also too my first time having a live studio audience, which is really, really interesting in and of itself. But here we are. So Cameron, tell me about, let's kind of walk through how you felt after we got everything closed out. So we want to work our way back. So when, once we got it under contract, we knew the day was coming, got through the inspection items. We'll talk about that for sure.
Yeah.
And we're going to just highlight how you felt, knowing that we went to the closing table and was able to get it done from, all the stuff that got you to the finish line.
Okay. No, first, just thank you for having me, Terrance.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate the opportunity. So going back to kind of how I felt when we closed.
Yeah.
Oh man. So this is on the first house.
Yeah, the first one.
The first one. Yeah. So I mean, when we closed out the first one, I mean, it was a exhilarating feeling for sure. I mean, we had went through quite a few things, as you know, Terrance. With repairs and. We had inspectors that we felt weren't giving us a fair shake on.
Yeah, that's happened quite frequently.
So, we had to spend, a lot of time and kind of figure some things out on how to get this house to market or get it sold, I'd say. But no, it was an exhilarating feeling, looking for us and our opportunities. It was the start of the capital that we could put to the side so that we could start, acquiring other properties, us as a family.
Correct, yeah, for sure. So I know you said that, of course, so when we met, I know a lot of times we meet with a lot of prospective investors. We have a lot of conversations saying, hey, I want to do this, I want to get started with real estate investing. But what prompted you all as a family to really stay consistent after the sale of the home? Y'all got the money in the account, and now it's a matter of, we can just take our portion, we can wait around on the right deal. And sometimes waiting tend to go on and lag for an extended period of time. So how did y'all go from the idea of this is what we're going to do? Y'all closed out on the sale of the family home, and then you wanted to purchase. You wanted to decide to find another one to purchase.
Yeah, I would really say it was just having a plan from the start.
Yeah.
We had planned to sell this house and move those profits into other properties that we ended up buying, and we'll talk about the Walker one later.
Correct.
But it all started actually. We sold a property in Missouri.
Yeah. Okay.
And we moved those funds into another home for my family, so that we could end up renovating the one on Mayo.
Yeah.
And then selling it.
Okay.
And so it was all a part of kind of I'd say a 1.5, 2-year plan that we had, and that we wanted to follow through with.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. And I think being able to highlight that time frame is important. A lot of people think, they go to a seminar, listen to a webinar, look at YouTube, and I'm going to get this started on this tomorrow. But everybody's situation is different. Sometimes you want to move faster, sometimes you want to move a little slower. But circumstances oftentimes dictate how we can maneuver and kind of push forward in terms of the way that we want to go. So when you decide on looking at Walker, in the Midtown, Cooper Young area to be specific. So how did you all kind of settle on that particular potential asset?
Man, so Cooper Young is an area that I always love to go to. I knew it had a lot of demand from, people, walking around, going to bars.
That's true.
I know it's a place I'd like to be, right? And so, that was kind of the first step. Second step is just, market research.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, looking around at comparable sales, what's selling in that area. I know I reached out to you to help me, through that process of kind of understanding what the value was in that area. And then we got a home that was kind of on the edge, but it was still in there.
That's true, yeah.
Right.
it was a sliver.
It was a sliver. It was right up against the zip code line.
That's true.
Which in that area makes a difference.
Yeah, it does makes a huge difference. Yeah, because everything is so compact and compressed, just in the downtown, midtown area. Being able to be on that line, it matters a lot for sure.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So. No, yeah, we had to get our, had to get the comps together, had to understand the marketplace, figure out what's selling in Midtown, and then we found an opportunity with a property that hadn't sold, was kind of on the market. I think that property was on the market for like 100 days, and had fell in and out of contract. So, we just kind of took a bite on it and went for it.
That's true. That's true. So walk me through like when y'all acquired it, the renovation process, kind of getting started. That was your first renovation.
Yeah. So Mayo was the first.
Mayo was the
first one. So we met a contractor when we bought. My wife and I, we bought our house.
Correct.
We met a contractor. Kind of stayed in contact with him. And then we, invited him out to the Mayo property and was like, hey, this is kind of our plan. So my wife, she does all the designing.
She did a really good job. Yeah, she did a really good job.
Everything that we look at, she does, kind of
aesthetics.
The aesthetics of the property. So it's really great working, as a family. But so we brought him out, right? Take a look at that property. He'd already done a few things for us at the home that we had just bought. And so we went through that process with him, and I guess it was 4 guys, maybe him and 4 guys, kind of putting it all together. So no, it was just kind of looking at at that point we were fresh in the game, trying to understand what's material costs, how much this stuff costs, what is a good budget for labor. And kind of trying to put together what we called a kind of a construction plan, for the property. And it was difficult because we didn't have the, initial experience.
Correct, for sure. Yeah, and I think being able to, especially, oftentimes when you're going down the path of, flipping a house or even just acquiring real estate as an investor in particular, just being able to understand having the right team. I think that's the most critical part of the process outside of the actual acquiring the asset. So after you, of course, acquire the property, because of course, no matter, even if you got the best team, wrong property, wrong area, you still kind of run into some more bigger problems. But I think being able to have the right team in place and kind of constantly being able to vet and explore different contractors in different areas as you kind of go along, I think that's important as well. So from a renovation perspective, on the front end, what do you think, was there anything you think you all could have did a little bit different on the renovation front that maybe would have kind of caused the outcome to come at a faster pace? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that we got flagged on that house on some foundational stuff that we had to do
on the sale portion of it.
On the sale portion of it, but we didn't. That was not on our inspection.
Correct.
When we initially bought the house. And so I think just looking back, being able to call the right people, like maybe getting an engineering inspection when you have a crawl space.
Correct.
Maybe could have allowed us not to have to go through that. Essentially, or just kind of looking at just certain things regarding materials and things inside the house, right? And like hey, we got some wood that we need to replace. Let's kind of go ahead and replace that.
It's kind of waiting to the
so
next
you kind of got to watch your project and actively manage it,
that's true.
And know exactly what needs to be replaced there. So going back, I think those are a couple of things, at least on that Mayo property, that we would have
done different.
We would have done differently.
So on the one on Walker, once you all went in and kind of renovated, of course your wife did the front yard, made it look really, really good. And so now we're on the market. So we begin to put it on the market, and we start open houses. Initially, it wasn't a whole lot of activity. There was no activity.
Have none.
There was no activity. There was no activity. And of course, in this market, you can look at the numbers. You can, look at, comparables. You can look at real-time activity in the area. But the reality of it is that you don't know what you have in an asset until you take it to the market. And then, of course, the market being what it is now, like we was talking about earlier, interest rates being, high, price points being high, renovation costs being high. So, it's a lot to kind of get to the actual marketplace to be a buyer these days as opposed to 2-3 years ago. I think I was looking at a study, I was looking at something online this morning. It was saying that, homes 5 years ago was probably at least about, 40 to 50% less than what they cost today, in terms of actual out-of-pocket expenses on a month-to-month basis. I think they were saying something back then, it was about $1,700 average mortgage per month now is close to like $3,000 a month.
That
so
sounds about right.
yeah, if you look at and just kind of looking at it from a longer, broader perspective, if you look at it, see how home prices has risen compared to the actual wages, increase. I mean, you see kind of where the disconnect is, and of course, it was a recent study showing that the average first time buyer is like almost mid-40s, like 42, 43 years old. So it's not like coming out of college, getting ready to go. So those are more so anomalies these days, as opposed to the way that it was back in the day. So how did you feel, me contacting you, every week, and we don't have really no update to give? So talk to me about your thought process on that.
So at first, I would say it was pretty. I didn't say soul crushing, but it was. I mean, we wanted to sell the home, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's an investment.
And then you put on that note, not to cut you off, but you also put a lot emotional into it as well.
Right.
Proceed. Yeah.
No, 100%. No, Terrance, you're right. I mean, a lot of emotional capital goes into the homes. A lot of capital, right? Goes
real
into
capital too.
Real capital. And so yeah, I mean, we had put a lot into it, and it was disappointing, right, to not have a sale. But I think that just understanding kind of the timing of the market.
Correct, too, yeah. And
right.
I think that's the critical part, too. And I do work with a lot of sellers. I mean, we got a lot of them right now, and a lot of them, kind of disconnected from, the actual reality of the marketplace. And it's just, this is what it is. I mean, you put it out there, and of course, ultimately, the market determines price. We can say what we want to say, rationalize whatever decision that we choose to make, but the ultimate decider is the marketplace. And then the question becomes, how you going to just kind of, moving about in the actual marketplace. I know while we had it on the market, we weren't getting any showings, we started doing the open house, and the open house was pick up at least one person, 2 to 3 people would kind of come through, and when we wasn't doing the open house, we still wasn't getting any activity.
Right.
And so we get down to roughly about 30 something odd days in, we're like, listen, let's kind of reset and kind of do something else. Usually looking at some other lending options as well.
Right.
They kind of talk me through that part of your thought process.
Yeah, I mean, like one thing I learned, I guess it's storm. No, I was just say, one thing I learned is one of the, you have all these pieces that you manage. You're basically managing like you're a small corporation.
Correct.
You got workers. You're managing a capital position or a treasury position. One of those most important things I just say is that understanding how much capital you have.
Yeah.
Right, because you will only have a property as long as you can hold it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Yeah.
So just kind of looking at us going through that process, not getting any showings, and every 30 days. I'm on an interest only sort of operation because I got we used hard money,
correct,
to fund all the repairs, so we got an interest only product and it's high.
Yeah.
I mean, it's plus 10.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, we're looking at a $2,000, $3,000 bill every single month. Right. So having to carry that and not getting any showings, disappointing.
To say the least. Yeah.
To say the least, right? But I think you just have to understand in your mind that one is you have market timing. There's other options with real estate, right? So we had it on the market, but we could have rented it out.
Correct. That's true.
I think we talked about that.
We did. We explored that too. Kind of looking at it from an investor perspective. We looked at an option of saying, if we were to just take the least amount possible, how advantageous that would be to a prospective investor. If we placed a potential tenant, what would that look like in terms of return on investment? Would it be advantageous for an investor to take a look at and say, I like these returns, I like this area, but then after it all kind of shook out, I mean, it was kind of still, not necessarily strong enough for us to go down that particular road.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we explored the Airbnb valuation.
Yeah, that's true. We did look at that too.
Yeah, we were pretty. We went to alternative routes to try to figure out how we could get this property.
Off the books. Yeah, and that's the thing about it too, is that you got to be able to look at the marketplace and say, here's where I am right now. This is what I want to do, but if this not working, like what are the other options on the table for me to kind of explore and begin to kind of move down the road path of just trying to get, reset, trying to get this off the books, get as much as I can, reset, and then take the knowledge with me into the next transaction and next deal and kind of go from there.
Yeah, and I appreciate your coaching on that, Terrance. Just like, hey, look, we had these other options. I know you're burning capital every month. And I mean, for us as a business, it was a bit less of a strain because we're family business,
Correct,
so we
yeah.
have multiple partners.
Partners activity as opposed to just you being, standalone and a single investor. And I think that's a good point to highlight as well, is that being able to, kind of like a syndication, but this is kind of like a syndication, but from a family perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, a lot of people want all the money on the backside, will prefer to be solo on the backside, but when you run into challenges on the front side or in the middle, it's better to have those capital, capital partners where you're able to, of course, you're taking a hit, but it's barely, it pales in comparison to if you was doing it all solo.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's nice when it's family because you got the emotional support.
Yeah.
Everybody's losing money, so we can
That's true,
we can group up on that.
Yeah. They said misery loves company.
Right.
Yeah, but in that case, though, at least you do got somebody to talk to, and they really thoroughly understand and get it as well. But also, too, so how was it for you being able to kind of keep everybody up to date, even though it's family, because, of course, a lot of times people say, don't mix business and family, but I think, it depends on the circumstances of the situation, and every dynamic is different. So how was it as a manager from that perspective, managing the lack of opportunity that was kind of showing its face as we was trying to get the home sold? Like, how did you kind of navigate that?
I would say, just being, just have to be honest with your partners, right? I mean, if you're in a partnership, you're the manager, you have to do reporting on what's going on, how much capital you're spending, whether it's utilities or just upkeep, because you got to keep the house, nice.
Yeah.
You got to keep the utilities on.
Yeah.
And also you got to make sure you still own the property from an interest, interest cost perspective.
Yeah.
So, I feel like we were just, I just kept everyone up to date, right? We're a close family.
Yeah.
I got my wife, and it's my mom and my dad.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So
y'all talking all the time.
we're talking all the time,
Yeah.
so that was, we would just kind of group up at a round table and, hey, this is where we are. We just spent another $3,000. Right.
That's true. That's true. So, what would you advise for like a new investor, kind of running into a similar situation up to the point that we are in this discussion? Like, what would you advise as bringing on a capital partner? Being able to kind of understanding that what you expect to kind of have happen. In the end result may not necessarily be as strong as you would like. Like, how would you advise a new investor, just based on that part of the experience before we start talking about the actual, inspection from the buyers and all that stuff?
I would say to a new investor, first and foremost, you have to understand the market. Yeah. I think it's really easy to buy a bad deal out here, and if you don't do the due diligence from an inspection perspective, or you're not looking, for the right things, you can grab a deal that's not, that's not going to yield you anything.
Yeah.
I would also say, from a capital perspective, that you need to make sure that this is kind of the rule that we implemented, is that I need to have as much capital as it's going to cost to renovate the property after I close, right? Just in cash. So if you're using a lender like we use that funded you, all your repair costs, you still need to have that money in cash, right? Just kind of sitting over to the side, because it's an operating capital. Because I'll say, just from our experiences, one of the easiest ways I think to kind of be out of the game is not be able to pay your contractors.
That's true.
All work stops.
That's true. All work stops, and you also get the mechanical liens. So you get the mechanical liens, and so just for the audience, is that a mechanical lien is that basically if somebody's doing some work on your house, y'all got a contract in place, you got some benchmarks that you're supposed to hit financially, they got some benchmarks they're supposed to hit, constructively, and kind of getting things together, and essentially you default, and they feel as if y'all are not able to work it out, and they just say, since you're trying to sell a house anyway, let me go ahead and put this lien on there, so when you get the buyer, I may not get my money now, but I may get it down. I'll be able to get it down the road in a lawsuit, more or less. Yeah. So I think that's a really, really good critical aspect to kind of highlight for sure.
Yeah, and you lose trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You lose trust.
Sure.
You lose trust with that contractor. You lose trust. You can lose trust with other contractors in the market.
That's true. Yeah, true.
So you got to keep, you got to keep your name good. Right.
Yeah, I think that's important. So when I think we had pulled it from the market at this point. So after we pulled it from the market for a minute, you was looking at some other financial options at the same time, and we was like, let's go in and kind of do a smooth through small things, take some more pictures, kind of get it clean, spruced up a little bit more, and then go back to the market again. So how did you think about that part of the process when we kind of talked about it and I introduced it?
Oh, it's obviously, as an investor, I want to get the property sold,
So,
right?
ASAP,
ASAP, and if it's not on the market, you could feel like it's not about to be sold.
So,
But
Yeah,
I think
true.
it just comes with, especially if you're new,
Yeah.
understanding that there's so much to learn, and working with somebody experienced that has done this, works with investors, I think is really important because Terrance, you was able to explain to me why this was a good thing for us to do, right? Take it off the market, let's kind of let it cool down. We actually got I think the days on Zillow reversed back to 1. So when we re-put it on the market, it was like the property was new again.
Correct, too. We have been able to reset.
Which I think that was, really important for us actually going forward and getting it sold.
Yeah, I think so too. Because after we went back to the market, so essentially after we went back to the market, started back doing the open houses, and of course, it was hit or miss, depending on what day it was. So some people come out, some people wouldn't, and then we finally got those buyers that came out. Essentially, they would live down the street. So
Right.
So on their part that part was kind of really unique. I mean, I never sold a home from no showings and from an open house only. Like, I mean, I've sold homes with open houses, but we was also getting regular showings too. So it wasn't like either or. In this particular case, we had 0 agents come through, like other than the agent that came through on the open house one day, but no set showings in the home. We get a buyer, a couple walk in. I'm like, okay, cool, let me talk to them. We talked for about 45 minutes, found out that they live literally on the same street, and they have been looking for 2.5 months.
Yep.
So they've been looking for 2.5 months with that agent, who the wife really, really liked, and the husband not so much. But
It happens.
but the reality of it is that they never seen the house. They didn't see the house, and they were just out walking. So they came out and took a look at the home, and they asked a lot of questions. Again, like I said, we talked about 30, 45 minutes, and it was just one of those situations where they left. I'm like, okay, cool. This sounds like it may be good. Maybe on to something. And they was like, we'll call you in a day or so. And so I think that, of course, I told you about them coming through that, we always do our little recap, either that date or the next day. So we gave our recap. And then, I think that next Tuesday, so it was like a Saturday, maybe like a Saturday or Sunday, I did the open house. And then the next Tuesday, the agent called and said, hey, we want to submit an offer on the home. We had a great conversation. I mean, I'm like, the terms was pretty good. So how did you feel once we received the actual offer?
No, that was, man. That was the best, because that was the first one that we had, actually acquired then sold.
Correct.
Right. So it was like the precipice of everything that we're looking at now. So it was, man, I couldn't be happier when you called me and told me, especially with no showings. So
exactly, which is extremely unique and rare.
Yeah, I mean, man, no, it was exciting. You feel like what you put into it is now you're finally about to get it out. And the hard work. Somebody actually liked kind of what you put into a home too. So it's a good feeling from that perspective too. But closing costs, kind of crept into the deal.
Yeah, that's true. Of course, it's kind of given the phase of the real estate market right now, because it's really more of a buyer's market, more or less, than a seller's market for the most part. But also at the same time, some homes are still flying off the shelf, within the first week. So it's just one of those things where you got to, it's just a matter of demand. Somebody really just got to be looking. And of course, with so fewer people looking compared to year over year, you just don't really know exactly how that's going to go. So we're under contract at this particular point. Now they get ready to do their due diligence, of course. So they get their home inspectors out, and then we get the home inspection list. What you think about the home inspection?
What was it? 2-3 pages long?
At least 3 pages.
At least 3 pages.
Long,
Yeah, I mean, so we got an initial inspection on that house when we bought it. We felt like we had fixed every single thing that was on that initial inspection.
We had seen the floors with a little wave in it, but it was like, okay, cool. Like, I mean, this is Midtown. It kind of
home.
It goes.
Yeah, I don't know. When we got that, it was definitely something where I was like, all right, we're going to keep an open mind. So we immediately had to get everybody in the room and we have a buyer.
Yeah.
You know, we're about to
Yeah.
you know we're about to finally sell this home after a drought period. You know, especially coming out of the winter. You know, we need to keep an open mind on this. Understand that there will be profit once we get done with this.
Yeah, just for being able to pitch that, so you had to preface it before you laid it all out.
Exactly.
Because I know mom and dad is like, it's absolutely not. Like,
Oh, man.
nobody did it for us. You know, they didn't do it for us, so why we gonna do it for somebody else?
Right.
Which is fundamentally, you know, true. So I mean, it's not like it's wrong. They wrong. Of course, I don't know if they said that, but I'm just kind of just.
You're not too far off.
Just kind of put myself in the room. But yeah. So once y'all took a look at it, y'all decided.
Put a game plan together and let's get it done.
Yeah. And so we had some potential foundation issues that he wanted to get a secondary inspection by a structural engineer. Yeah.
Right.
And I haven't personally, or professionally rather, I haven't professionally witnessed structural engineering company coming out and them not saying anything. I just haven't witnessed it. You know, and that's not to say that all of them, every time they come out, they say something, but I mean, I've had them out in a decade probably about 6 times, and every time it's every time it's something. Every time it's something. So I digress. I don't want to go down that road path on that. So once y'all, so now we got the home inspection items. Then we move to the structural engineering items.
Right.
And so that list come back. So how do you address it with the team?
Once again, keep an open mind.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, at that point, I mean, so you know, the inspection came first, right? We completed that.
Yeah,
stuff.
you knocked it out within the first 2 to 3 days, and I really like that as your agent for sure. Yeah.
No, thank you. And you know, too, we were talking, Terrance, and you were like, you know, with all this stuff that's on this inspection report, a lot of buyers may have walked.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'm glad you mentioned that, because the agent actually, like Terrance, listen, you know, the buyer is like, you know, basically borderline on walking away. So I'm like, listen, you know what do we kind of go with? Because I think the structural engineer gave us 3 contractors to kind of choose from. And so looking at that list, like, listen, we can use this particular list here. And of course, we tried to, you know, as your agent, I'm like, listen, what if we, you know, escrow the money from the funds that we're going to get, you know, from the proceeds, as opposed to trying to, you know, tap my client's pocket. Of course, we've already done all these home inspection items, and we give your buyer closing cost assistance. So we just asking for a little concession. We're not saying we're not going to do it. We're saying no, we're going to do it, but we don't necessarily want. We don't have the proceeds to do it. We don't want to commit that to doing it. And so basically, you know, they didn't go for it.
No.
They didn't go for it. They also didn't go for it because we wanted to try to renegotiate the closing costs, because now we're paying so much more money. Because at the end of the day, we came in looking at it from one perspective, and now we're here. And so how are we going to pivot and kind of, you know, this is just compounded, you know, expenditures that we're getting. And so they didn't go for that either.
No, they didn't.
And then, of course, so you got bids from the country, you got bids from the structural engineering contractor. So how did they go?
Oh man, it's such a wide range that you get. Yeah, and wide range of opinions on how to fix stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? You know, you go to the boilerplate guys, right? And they quoted us, I think it was around $20,000 to do it. And then we went to another recommended company, and they were $12,000 cheaper. Yeah. You know, so it was that process was really interesting. You know, you really couldn't. I know we had talked about kind of just getting a licensed contractor out there to handle the work. And at this point in the deal, it was more so better for us to
satisfy the buyer than to kind of just bring somebody in and maybe to get the work done officially and professionally, save us some money, but they're outside of the network of the structural engineer who essentially the buyer hires, so the buyer's going to trust they people versus bringing somebody in from the outside.
Yep.
And I think essentially, anything other than that, I don't think we would have got that buyer to the closing table.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think we had to kind of go down the road, because that's why we did it. So I think once we were able to kind of get over that hump, and of course we had the potential issue of the logistics of the time frame it may take in terms of getting on somebody's schedule with one of the contractors as well, and we was able to kind of work through that and kind of push things forward. So what was your thought on that process?
You just never know. I mean, it's a lot of work out there. You know, you're working with contractors. That's why I think it's important to, you know, be able to cast a wide net.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm glad that the engineering company gave us 3 options that we could use. because we contacted all
All
three.
three.
We had bids from all three. So
That's true. Because like I said, one was 20, one was probably like $5,000 or $6,000 less than them. The one that was, it was the one that was a little less expensive and was able time frame wise to kind of get us on in there to get it done and kind of be able to get it all wrapped up.
absolutely, yeah. So I mean, we would have went back to the engineering company if we couldn't get it done in time frame. We'd have went back to them and asked them for 3 more recommendations.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually just kind of keep going in that
Just
particular.
keep going down that path.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense a lot. So once we were able to get those items taken care of, how did you feel in terms of the relief part of it? In terms of like we getting ready to wrap this thing all the way up. But of course, we didn't come into it anticipating pretty much nothing that expired, nothing that transpired rather. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, once we had wrapped it all up, it was a sigh of relief. I feel like, as a new investor, like, I mean, you got all these things that you're looking at. You're looking at the market, trying to make sure you had a great purchase. I think that's one of the important things too.
It's the most critical thing, yeah.
Is your buy.
That's true. It's true because you win or lose on the acquisition. So
Right.
even if you may not necessarily make a lot on the back side, if you're able to purchase it right on the front side and have that room, because you need it. Oftentimes you need that, especially in this market. I mean, you need it more so than probably within the last 5-6 years for sure. Just because you just don't know exactly if it's going to be able to hit like you need it to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you got to have your allocations for closing costs. Things like what we went through happening.
Plus price reductions and
price
closing costs
reductions.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have your numbers dialed in on what that property is worth, what it's gonna cost to fix it.
Yeah, true. Kind of put you in the best position overall. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now that you got that wrapped up, of course, I know you got one in Arkansas. Let's talk about that one. Let's talk about that one a little bit too. So when did you purchase the one? When did y'all purchase the one in Arkansas? So tell me about how did y'all end up in Arkansas to begin with?
To be honest, I don't really know. And not that Arkansas is a bad market. I think we were looking at some information on the new Buc-ee's that's supposed to be going in right. I think that's northeast of West Memphis, as well as the Google Data Center.
Yeah.
So we saw growth there, and wanted to pick one of the better areas in West Memphis to buy a home long term. And so, I think that, West Memphis kind of came, but we were looking at the market. We saw a property had just come on the market for sale. It was, in a good area. We did our research, pulled comps in that area, and, we went out there to see it, and it was, it kind of gave us the feeling of the deal we had just purchased. Right?
It's in a good area, it needs a little work, but it should be good to go.
Should make it work, And I'll tell you too, like as a new investor, you do one acquisition, you get that itch.
That's true. You be ready to rock and roll.
And you gotta be careful, because you can overextend yourself extremely quickly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So y'all buy that when y'all begin to start the renovation. So tell me about the renovation part of that particular one.
That particular property, I mean, the renovations were on the front end were pretty straightforward. We bought it as a 3-1, and so a 3-1.5. It had a Jack and Jill suite, and so us looking at we had kind of finished out the property doing just really light renovation stuff, and then we kind of took a look at the comps and we said, hey, if we make this a 3-2. There's a little bit more value in that in this marketplace in West Memphis, and so we decided to convert the Jack and Jill into a 3-2.
Okay.
But that was market research driven.
Correct. That makes sense. So y'all get the property up and running, get ready for the market. And so, how did you feel about going to the market over there?
I felt great. I did. I felt great when we first put it on, and I walk into that property at least once a week.
Just kind of
check on it, and I mean, it is a beautiful house. I mean, my wife Taylor, she killed it on the design of that property. But we went to the market expecting it to kind of go pretty quickly, and it's still out there. We're still working through it.
You're gonna get a buyer. You're gonna get a buyer.
We'll get a buyer. I mean, there's some outside influences on that property from a neighborhood perspective that is affected.
That's exactly what you mentioned. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that briefly, because I think that's a critical thing too. Is that you go into a transaction and saying, you know what, you got all the measurables that you can kind of add up and kind of equate to kind of how you want it to be, and then some unexpected, like a property, home close by that may turn into an issue that kind of that you have over there.
Yeah. I mean, you can always budget and account for things that
and you can control,
that you can control, but you can't for the things that you can't control, right? In this particular case, a neighbor, accidentally burns their house down.
Yeah.
And so we're the property right next door.
Yeah.
And so that, from a value perspective, even though we've added these additional bathrooms, we have this beautiful sunroom inside, we've done all this work to put in, it has put a black eye on our property.
Yeah, that's true.
Sitting next door.
So it's like they pulling up online, it looks great. They pull up to the block, it looks good. They pull up to the house, it's like, oh, the house is great. Like, dang, what's going on next door?
What was happening
next
there?
Door. Yeah. So I think, because we talked about that, and I was like, bro, I think ideally what you want to do is try to get the city involved, or try to even track down the owners and try to get an idea in terms of what they're willing to do, because depending on how the damage is constructed, they may be able to kind of board it up, they may be able to kind of, put up a fence around it, kind of make it look more like a real construction site, like something really going on, as opposed to just, whatever it is right now. Because that can really help out a lot for sure, just kind of being able to just see some potential work in progress, or at least number one, that is secure.
Right.
When you talk about a family, they're looking at, the husband's looking at it when I'm not home, and the mom is talking about the children, going over there and kind of running across some stuff. And of course, as we just mentioned, it's nothing that you can do as a real estate investor on the front end to, deal with that. I mean, the reality of it is that this can happen to anybody, any real estate investor. I mean, and so it puts you in a position where, not only are you dealing with the elements that's in the marketplace, but now you're also dealing with, elements that's outside of the marketplace that don't have anything to do with you. And the worst part about it is that you have no direct control over.
Right.
So how are you feeling about that particular property at the moment?
I mean, we're still hopeful.
For sure. And I think it'll eventually sell. It's just a matter of just kind of being able to, like I said, just being able to get the right buyer. Because for the right buyer, they still can kind of overlook the fact that the house next door at the current time is, dilapidated, more or less, burned out, more or less.
Right.
Yeah. And I think being able to have, and I just thought about this too, and being able to have a conversation with the actual owners potentially, and being able to at least get a framework in terms of what they're planning on doing, that's something that the real estate agent can talk about over there. Say, listen, I know you may have, even if they bring it up, like you may have some concerns about this house over here, but we spoke to the owners that they're in the process of doing blah, 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 blah. They're waiting on the insurance company, they're waiting on, So that way, even though it is what it is, but also to being able to have a forward-thinking story allows for the prospective buyer to be like, okay, cool, it's worth purchasing this home. We really, really like the home, and eventually they're going to do something with this home next door.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think when it initially, because it's the story is kind of, I mean, it's a sad story. Someone's house burned down, but it's kind of funny in the sense of the day we went to the market is the day the house burned down.
Oh yeah.
That's it, literally. We listed it. We had been on the market for 5 hours, and the house. I got a call from my contractor who was cleaning up just a few things. He called me and said, "Hey, the house next door is on fire," and we just got here.
And you always doing it because it's like, so it'd be different if that would have happened in the beginning. It's like, I mean, they got to maneuver some stuff, got to do something a little bit different.
And I'm calling him like, protect our house. We just got finished. Spray some, spray some water out there or something.
Turn the sprinkler system on or something.
Yeah, turn the sprinkler system on.
But when that's another point too, is that, fortunately that, and that's the thing about, as an investor, when you're acquiring these properties, especially if you're using lending, you're always going to get insurance, day one, hazard insurance, and also vacancy insurance as well, because they need to know that it's vacant, because dealing with these insurance companies these days, that's a whole nother, actually I'm going to run a segment on that, I think in the upcoming podcast, because these days they probably denying 60 to 70% of these claims, just in general, no matter what they are. I mean, I think, especially when you're dealing with, last year I had like 3 clients that had water damage because of the burst pipes, and only one person out of the 3 got any money. You know, and the crazy part is that all of them was using the same insurance company. All of them had the same issues, and the client they got the money, they got theirs probably in like a week and a half.
Wow.
It's almost a year later, and one of my clients is still trying to get money from the insurance company. The insurance company is still asking for more and more documents. The first client didn't have to produce any only thing they had to produce was the clean out, you know, like the ceiling clean out. That's it, just a receipt from the clean out, and that was it. No, because the other people, they wanted leases, they wanted utility bills, they wanted renovation bids, they wanted to talk to the contractors, and they still denied the people.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, you know, just being mindful of that insurance. I mean, there's really not much we can do because you got to hire somebody for insurance, and the bad part about it is that you don't know what you got until it's time to use it.
Right.
You know, and I know a lot of times too is that, you know, you get it, you know, you may be been with them for 20 years. Then you had one or two claims. Next thing you know, they dump you. Yeah, they drop you. So it's just one of those things, you know, you have to take into account as a real estate investor. So looking forward into 2026 and beyond, you know, so now it's a new Fed chief, you know, it's a new Fed chief in town. He just spoke, I think yesterday, and he was saying that, you know, rates are going to hold steady for right now. They're not looking to raise them and not looking to lower them. I think overall, you know, hopefully things begin to continue to tick down. Of course, you know, there's a lot of geopolitical issues out there in today's time that, you know, again, we don't have any control over. So the market is the market. We control what we can control. So how do you think about going into, you know, finishing up 2026, going into 2027? So once you finish up with Arkansas, get that property sold and off the books, what's the team next plan for going forward?
You know, I think that even before that one gets off the books, I think we're gonna get back out there and try to.
But I know you sent me something like a month ago.
I did, yeah. I actually checked back on that property.
You did? It's still out there? It's sold?
It's sold, yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah, it was.
We should have got that one.
Yeah, I'm telling you though, it's always the you know, the fascination with it is always great until like, dang, you know what? Because, you know, the things that we highlighted before, but I think, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm,
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, but just, you know, going forward, I think we're gonna, you know, look, I mean, after you've done your first couple, right, you know, and you kind of seen where you made some missteps, you know, I should have hired a better inspector here, I should have got an engineering guy here, you know, when we saw that rotted wood that was on the outside, maybe we should have went ahead and replaced it, or even, it wasn't even rotted, let's say it was, you know, kind of damaged slightly, you know, we should have replaced it because, you know, things are going to get flagged. Perception and things are going to get flagged from an inspection perspective, and it's best to just go ahead and do it than having to go back and do it. And two, I mean, I would say that, you know, with the marketplace where it is today, we you know, feel that we're going to be a lot more disciplined on picking our spots in the Memphis area. You know, places that have a high degree of sales with maybe, you know, not a whole lot of inventory on the market.
That's true, because that's another thing too to highlight too. That was one of the challenges that I'm having now, but it's also been a challenge that we had too. There was a lot of homes like 14, 12, 10. It was like 3 or 4 on the same street. 2 or 3 on the same street. So yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that deal taught me that.
Yeah.
Right. You know, let's you know, looking at the available inventory and kind of what you're up against. You know, in that area. So, you know, I think for us going forward, you know, we're gonna, you know, kind of pick our spots. We're gonna continue. You know, we got the property in Arkansas. It's, you know, we know that the market will move in the way it needs to.
Correct. That's true. That's true.
You know, we're just gonna continue to, you know, kind of make sure that we build up our, you know, our contractors.
Correct too. Yeah, just kind of keep testing, tracking, and kind of putting people in the right position, because you may have a great contractor, but he also specializes in one thing and does really, really great at one thing, and also gives you a good price for the level of service that he's providing in that particular arena.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's good. So listen, bro, thanks again for coming out and being able to sit down with us. I mean, again, you're the first guest, so I mean, you know, when things go up, you know, I mean, I'm gonna look out for you. We're gonna see how these numbers do, and we're gonna be able to go from there. But I do want to highlight that I'm hosting a webinar next month. You know, Christmas in July for prospective new investors that are looking to get started and possibly purchase an investment property between now and Christmas. And so, just like my guy did, it's just a matter of you know, getting the knowledge, being able to get all your ducks in a row, being able to get your team together, and we want to go over all of that next month. It's going to be July the 11th at 10 a.m. Christmas in July. Thanks again for stopping by. Terrance Hill, real estate consultant, no comp, no cap, and this is a wrap.